The royal palace of the Zore people was built with tall crystal towers that shone under the twin suns. Inside the main hall, bright banners of gold and green hung from the ceiling. Nobles sat on long benches, their eyes sharp with pride as they waited for the newest visitor from Earth. The air was filled with the sound of alien music, soft and steady like flowing water. At the center of the hall sat Rena, the young alien royal. She was 19 seasons old by her people's count, proud and certain of her place. Her silver eyes scanned the crowd, and her voice carried with a tone that demanded attention. Rena had been raised to think her people were above all others. To her, humans were newcomers to the stars, small in number and even smaller in wisdom. The great doors opened. A human man entered with steady steps. His name was Tamash. He was not a soldier or a noble. He wore no armor and carried no weapon. His clothes were plain, but his eyes were calm. He had been sent as part of a peace mission, to build ties between Earth and the Zore. Every noble whispered as they saw him. Some looked down on him, thinking of humans as fragile. Others were curious. Few humans had ever walked this hall before. Tamash felt their stares but did not show unease. He held a small wooden box in his hands. It was simple, carved with care, polished to shine. When Tamash reached the throne, he bowed his head with quiet respect. He lifted the box and opened it for the young royal. Inside lay a carved figure made of earth oak. The figure was shaped like a bird in flight, wings spread wide. "This is a gift," Tamash said. His voice was steady, not loud, but clear enough to carry through the hall. "It comes from the forests of my world. We carve wood to honor life. This bird means freedom and hope. I give it to you as a sign of peace between our people." The nobles leaned forward to look. Many had never seen real wood before, for their world was poor in forests. To them, the carving was unusual. Some whispered in wonder. But Rena's face hardened. She narrowed her silver eyes, then let out a laugh that echoed through the hall. "A piece of dead tree," Rena said, raising her voice so all could hear. "Is this what humans call treasure? Do you think we, children of crystal towers, need such toys? Perhaps your kind has no greater craft than this." The hall filled with laughter from the young nobles who wished to please their royal. Some struck the floor with their staffs, mocking the gift. A few looked uneasy, but none spoke. Tamash did not answer. He did not bow lower, nor did he defend his gift. He stood straight, closed the box, and lowered his hands. His eyes met Rena's for a single moment. There was no anger in them, no shame, only quiet strength. Then, with the same calm steps, Tamash turned away. The hall fell into silence. Nobles stopped their laughter, watching as the human walked toward the doors without a single word. He did not hurry. He did not look back. The guards opened the doors, and Tamash left the grand hall as if the insult had not touched him at all. The silence felt heavy. Even Rena shifted in her seat, unsure why the human silence struck harder than any argument. She had expected anger, or pleading, or at least a defense of his strange gift. But he gave her nothing. He simply walked away. One old advisor leaned toward Rena and whispered, "Your Highness, he did not act as you thought he would. Humans may be more than you believe." Rena waved the words aside, though her face remained tight. She laughed again, though less strong than before. "He is weak," she said. He could not even answer. "Let him walk. He is no loss." But the hall was not as loud as before. Some nobles looked at the closed doors. They whispered to each other about the strange calm of the human. A few wondered if silence was not weakness, but strength. Outside, Tomasz walked down the long steps of the palace. The sun shone bright above him. He did not feel small under the vast sky. He carried the wooden box with care. To him, the insult was nothing. Words could not break him. His purpose was larger than the pride of one young royal. As he stepped into the busy streets of the alien city, many pairs of eyes followed him. Some were curious, others doubtful. But one thing was certain. The human had not begged. The human had not bowed lower than needed. He had shown respect, but not submission. That night, in the palace, Rena sat in her chamber with the sound of laughter gone. She looked out at the shining city. The human's calm face returned to her thoughts again and again. She did not understand why silence had felt heavier than any words. For the first time, she wondered if her people truly knew the measure of humans. And far below the palace, Tomasz began his quiet work in the city, ready to build, ready to show through actions what no insult could erase. The city of the Zore was alive with movement. Long bridges of crystal connected towers that touched the clouds. Shining vehicles flew between them, leaving trails of light across the sky. In the lower levels, however, life was not as bright. Old machines rusted in alleys, wires sparked in shadows, and the hum of broken engines filled the air. Tomasz walked there, far from the palace halls. He carried no guards, no banners, and no golden seat to show his rank. His plain clothes blended into the crowd. He carried the same wooden box with the bird carving, though now it was closed tight under his arm. His eyes studied the streets, not with fear, but with focus. Children of the Zore ran past him, chasing each other with glowing spheres of light. Traders shouted, selling food and tools. But many people frowned at the broken machines around them. A transport pod sat half buried in the street, useless for months. A water pump coughed and spilled more than it delivered. The citizens had learned to live with failure, for they believed repairs were costly and slow. Tomasz stopped at the transport pod. He ran his hand across its side, feeling the metal. The owner, a tired worker with rough skin, came forward. "It does not run," the worker said. "We wait for palace engineers, but they ask too much coin. It has been dead for a year." Tomasz knelt, opened a side panel, and looked inside. The machine was not destroyed, only clogged with dust and bent wires. With a small tool from his belt, he began to clear the mess. He worked with patience, his hands steady. Soon the pod's lights flickered. The worker gasped. "How did you do this? No engineer could be hired for such work." Tomasz smiled. "On Earth, we fix what we can with simple hands. We do not wait for kings to send help. A machine is only as broken as the care given to it." He tapped the wires again, and the pod roared back to life. The crowd cheered. The worker bowed deeply, tears in his eyes. "Human," he said, "you have saved me more than coin. You have given me back my work." Word spread quickly. By the next day, citizens came to Tomasz with their broken pumps, lights, and engines. He fixed each one with the same calm patience. He never asked for gold, only simple food and water. His ways surprised them, for Zore engineers charged high prices and often demanded gifts for their service. One young girl brought him a broken music box. It had belonged to her late mother, and no one could make it sing again. Tomasz opened it, cleaned the gears, and adjusted the springs. When the soft song filled the air once more, the girl wept and hugged the box to her chest. The people around whispered that the human had not only skill but also heart. Soon, whispers of his work reached the palace. Nobles argued among themselves. Some said his acts were tricks to gain favor. Others said his hands were guided by strange human knowledge. The truth was simpler. Tomasz did not seek power. He only wished to show that respect was earned through action. Rena heard the reports too. At first, she laughed. So the human plays with trash in the streets. Let him fix their toys. It changes nothing. But the laughter in the palace halls was less strong than before. Advisors spoke carefully. Your Highness, the people begin to speak of him with respect. They say his silence in the hall showed dignity. They say his hands bring life to what was thought lost. Rena frowned. She remembered his eyes when he left the throne room. Calm, unbroken, steady. That memory stung more now, for his silence had not faded. Instead, it grew louder with every story told in the city. One evening, Rena walked alone on a high balcony. From there, she could see the streets below. Lights flickered back on in places once dark. Machines once silent now moved again. She could hear faint cheers carried by the wind. She clenched her fists. How can a human, who I mocked, turn my people to admire him, she whispered to herself. Far below, Tomasz was teaching a group of young workers how to mend a water pipe with nothing more than heat and pressure. He explained each step with patience, letting them try with their own hands. When the water flowed strong again, the workers bowed, but Tomasz shook his head. Do not bow, he said. Bow only to truth and to life. What I show you is not mine alone. It belongs to all who are willing to learn. His words struck the workers deeply. They repeated them to others. Soon, many in the city began to say, bow only to truth and to life, as if it were an old teaching. The nobles in the palace grew restless. They gathered in private chambers, speaking in hushed tones. Some feared Tomasz was gaining too much power. Others wondered if humans had been wrongly judged. Rena called her closest advisor. Tell me honestly, she said. Is the human dangerous? The old man bowed. Not dangerous in the way you fear. He seeks no throne. His power lies in what he refuses to do. He does not beg, he does not boast, he does not demand. He shows through his hands and his silence. And in this, the people see strength. Rena turned away, her pride burning. Strength. He turned his back on me in the hall. He insulted my rule by walking away. The old man shook his head. No, princess. He did not insult you. He denied your insult the power to wound him. That is why the people speak of him now. For the first time in her young life, Rena did not know how to answer. She felt anger, but beneath it something else, something she did not wish to name. That night, Tomasz returned to the small room given to him in the city. He set the wooden bird carving on a table. He looked at it, remembering his home forests, the sound of wind through oak leaves, the songs of birds. He whispered to himself, let them think what they will. I came not to fight, but to show who we are. The wooden bird seemed to fly even in stillness, its wings spread wide. And somewhere in the palace, Rena could not sleep, for she kept seeing those same wings, carved by a hand she had once mocked. The silence of one human had begun to change a kingdom. The sun rose over the crystal towers of the Zore city. Its light spread across the bridges, casting long shadows on the streets below. The city looked brighter than before, for many of the broken machines were alive again. The people whispered the same name again and again. They spoke of the human called Tomasz. Tomasz spent his mornings walking the streets, helping where he was needed. He did not ask where to go. He listened to the voices of the people and followed the sound of trouble. If a pump failed, he was there. If a child's lamp went dark, he repaired it. His hands were always steady, his eyes always calm. He asked for nothing more than water and bread. One morning, Tomasz entered a square where a crowd had gathered. A broken energy well stood in the middle. Without it, many homes had gone without power for weeks. The nobles had promised repair, but none had come. The people argued, their voices sharp with anger. Tomasz stepped forward, examined the well, and spoke softly. "Bring me any spare wire, any pieces of metal you have. It does not need to be new." The crowd looked confused. They thought only palace engineers with rich tools could repair such a machine. But one man brought a bundle of wire. Another woman brought a piece of scrap metal. Soon the people placed all they had at Tomasz's feet. He worked with patience, showing each person what to do. He told the children to clean the gears, the men to bend the metal into shape, the women to twist the wires. Hours passed, and sweat covered their faces. But the well began to hum again. At last, light poured from it, filling the square with a golden glow. The people cheered. For the first time, they had not waited for nobles. They had worked with their own hands, guided by a human. Tomasz raised his voice so all could hear. "You see, the power is not mine. It is yours. Machines listen to those who do not give up. If you learn, you will not need to beg for help again." The people bowed, not in fear but in respect. They saw in Tomasz not just a man who fixed machines, but a teacher who gave them strength. By afternoon, news reached the palace again. The nobles gathered in anger. The human wins their hearts. Soon they will look to him instead of us. One young noble stood and shouted, "He is dangerous. He will turn the people against the crown." But the old advisor, the same man who had warned Rina before, shook his head. "He has not spoken against you. He works quietly. The people follow him because he gives them what you have denied. That is not rebellion. That is trust earned." Rina listened with tight lips. Her pride still burned from the day in the throne hall. She remembered how Tomasz had walked away without a word. Now, his silence had grown into a voice louder than her own. That evening, Rina called for her guards. "Bring the human to the palace. I wish to see with my own eyes what makes him so admired." When Tomasz entered the hall again, the nobles expected him to bow deeply, fearing the royal who had mocked him. But Tomasz only gave the same simple bow as before, no lower, no higher. He carried no gift this time, only his calm gaze. Rina looked at him, her silver eyes sharp. "You work in my city. You repair what is broken. You teach my people without asking permission. Why?" Tomasz answered in his steady voice. "Because they asked. Because they needed help. A ruler may command, but a neighbor may serve. I came not for permission but for peace." The nobles murmured at his words. Some felt insult, others felt respect. Rina leaned forward. "Do you seek to take their loyalty from me?" Tomasz shook his head. "Loyalty is not taken. It is given. They follow me now because I helped them. But they would follow you if you listened, if you gave them the same." The hall grew silent. Rina clenched her fists, but inside she felt something stir. His words cut through her pride. She wanted to dismiss him, but she could not. For she remembered the cheers in the streets, the lights that now shone again because of him. The old advisor spoke gently. Your Highness, perhaps the human is right. Perhaps strength is not only in crystal towers, but also in open hands. Rena turned her gaze away, her pride unwilling to admit the truth. Leave, she ordered Tomash. Return to your streets. I will decide later what place you have here. Tomash bowed once more and left the hall. He did not argue, he did not defend, he did not fight. His silence remained his answer. When he was gone, one noble spoke loudly, he insults us by refusing to fear. We should cast him out. But the old advisor shook his head again. Cast him out, and you will cast out the respect of the people with him. Watch instead. Learn. He may be the mirror that shows us what we have forgotten. That night, Rena could not sleep again. She walked her balcony, staring at the glowing city. For the first time, she noticed how many towers now shone with steady light, how many streets were alive with laughter. The city felt stronger, as if the people themselves had awakened. And all of this had begun with a human she had once mocked. In the quiet of her chamber, she whispered to herself, how can silence be stronger than my words? Down below, Tomash sat by a small fire in the workers' district. Children gathered around him, listening as he told them stories of earth, of forests where trees touched the sky, of oceans where waves roared like thunder, of stars seen from mountains with no towers to block them. His voice was calm, his words simple, but his listeners felt the power of worlds they had never seen. The wooden bird carving sat beside him, wings spread as if still flying. Tomash touched it once, then set it where the children could see. This bird, he told them, flies not because it is strong, but because it trusts the wind. So must you trust in your own hands, your own hearts. Then no tower, no crown, no chain can hold you down. The children nodded, eyes wide. The people listened in silence. And somewhere in the palace, Rena's heart grew heavier, caught between pride and something she did not yet understand. The city was calm when the morning began. Traders filled the markets with food and tools, children played on the crystal bridges, and the towers reflected the light of the suns. But deep inside the city, a warning bell sounded. The great power core, the heart of the city's energy, had begun to fail. The power core was older than most of the towers around it. It glowed like a star inside a chamber of steel and crystal. For years, the nobles had promised it was safe, yet few understood its workings. Now sparks burst from its sides, and dark smoke filled the chamber. Workers ran in fear. Lights across the city flickered. Pumps stopped, machines went silent, and shadows spread across the streets. If the core failed completely, the city would lose more than light. Food would rot, water would stop, and air systems would grow thin. In the palace, Rena was told at once. She stood in the hall with her nobles shouting in panic. Some demanded the engineers be called. Others cried that the city must be evacuated. None had answers. Rena's silver eyes narrowed. For the first time, she felt true fear. If the city fell, her people would blame her. She thought of the cheers she had heard for Tomash, the human who fixed what her nobles ignored. Find him, she ordered at last. Bring him to the core chamber. Tomash was already near the chamber when the guards found him. He had seen the lights fail in the streets and followed the trail of fear. The guards rushed him through the gates into the great chamber where the core roared like a storm. Heat filled the air, and sparks flew across the floor. Rena stood there, surrounded by her nobles, her face pale. "Human," she called, her voice sharp but trembling. "Can you stop this?" Tomash walked closer to the machine. His eyes scanned the glowing panels, the twisted wires, the smoke rising from cracks. He touched the side of the core with his hand, feeling the rhythm of its failing pulse. "Yes," he said quietly, "but not alone." The nobles gasped. "You dare give orders," one of them shouted. Tomash did not turn. "I do not give orders. I ask for hands. Many hands. This is not work for one." Rena hesitated. Pride held her tongue, but the sound of the core cracking shook her heart. At last she shouted, "Do as he says. All of you." Tomash spoke with calm authority. "You, bring water to cool the wires. You, hold this panel open. You, cut these parts free. Do not fear the heat. Move as I guide you." For hours they worked. Sweat poured from their faces, sparks burned their arms, and the roar of the machine filled their ears. Yet Tomash never lost his calm. His voice guided them like a steady river. Piece by piece, they removed the broken parts and replaced them with what they had. At last, Tomash took a bent rod of metal, hammered it straight against the floor, and fixed it into place. He turned to Rena. "Strike this lever when I say. Only once. Only with full strength." Rena's hands shook. She had never touched a tool in her life. Yet now all eyes were on her. Tomash met her gaze. His eyes were steady, unafraid. She lifted the hammer, waiting. "Now," Tomash said. She struck with all her strength. The lever snapped back into place. The core roared louder, then slowly grew steady. Its glow returned to full light, and the chamber filled with golden radiance. The city outside lit up again as towers and streets came alive with power. The people cheered in the streets. The nobles sighed in relief. Some fell to their knees in exhaustion. But Tomash only wiped the sweat from his brow and nodded. "It will hold, but you must watch it. Neglect brings weakness." Rena stood frozen. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. She looked down at her hands, still shaking from the strike. For the first time, she had done something not as a royal, but as a worker. And she had done it under the human's guidance. When the crowd began to leave, Rena called after Tomash. "Wait." He stopped, turning his calm eyes on her. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Why did you not let me fail? If the city fell, my people would have cast me down. You could have taken their loyalty for yourself." Tomash shook his head. "I did not come to take. I came to build. When a house burns, you do not wait for the fire to prove your neighbor unworthy. You help put it out, for all who live inside. Your city is your house. I only helped you hold it." Rena stared at him, her silver eyes softer now. "You are strange, human. Strange and dangerous." "Not dangerous," Tomash said simply. "Only unwilling to bow to pride." He turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving Rena with her thoughts. That night, the city glowed brighter than before. The people celebrated in the streets, singing of the human who had saved their homes. They lit lanterns in his honor, though he asked for none. In the palace, Rena sat alone on her throne. She thought of the hammer in her hand, the moment when she struck the lever. She thought of Tomash's words, spoken without anger, without demand. He had shown her strength she did not understand. The old advisor entered the hall quietly. "Your Highness," he said, "today the human saved more than the core. He saved your rule. The people saw you strike beside him. They will remember." Rena did not answer at once. At last, she whispered, "Tell me, old one. Is silence stronger than the crown?" The advisor bowed. "Sometimes silence is the voice of truth. The crown is strong when it listens to that voice." Rena looked out at the glowing city. Pride still held her heart, but now it was mixed with doubt. The human she had mocked had given her city back its life. She did not know whether to hate him or to respect him. Far below, Tomasz sat with the workers once more. He told them no grand tale of victory. He only said, "Remember what you saw. Remember what your hands can do. Do not wait for another to save you. You have the strength already." The people nodded, their eyes filled with hope. The wooden bird carving rested near him, its wings open wide, as if reminding all who saw it that flight was not given, but earned. The city was alive with joy after the power core had been saved. Lights burned brighter than before, machines hummed in steady rhythm, and people filled the streets with song. For the first time in many seasons, the people felt secure. And in every corner of the city, one name was spoken with respect. Tomasz, the human. Children played games pretending to be him, fixing broken toys and calling themselves builders of life. Traders offered him food without price. Workers bowed when he passed, though he always told them to rise again. He did not seek honor, yet honor followed him. In the palace, however, Rena's heart was unsettled. She walked the long halls, her steps restless. Her silver eyes reflected both pride and unease. Each time she heard her people cheer for Tomasz, a sharp sting ran through her chest. She remembered the day she had mocked him, and how he had walked away in silence. That silence haunted her more than his words ever could. Her nobles gathered in secret, speaking in urgent tones. Some feared the human's influence. Others feared what might happen if Rena continued to treat him as an enemy. "If you do not act, princess," one noble warned, "the people may one day choose him over you." Rena struck her hand against the table. "He is not of our blood. He will never sit on my throne. I am their royal. I am their guide." But even as she spoke, she remembered the hammer in her hands, the moment she had struck the lever to save the power core. She remembered Tomasz's calm eyes guiding her without judgment. She had been forced to listen, and the people had seen her obey his direction. That memory burned more than any threat. Days passed, and Tomasz continued his quiet work. He taught workers how to mend machines without waiting for palace orders. He showed families how to reuse old parts instead of throwing them away. He told them that strength was not in wealth but in the will to act. One evening, as the sun set and the towers glowed in red light, Rena disguised herself in plain clothes and left the palace. She walked through the streets, hiding her royal face under a hood. She wanted to see with her own eyes what the people spoke of. She found Tomasz in the workers' district, surrounded by men, women, and children. He sat on a low bench, repairing a small farming tool while teaching others how to do the same. His voice was calm, his hands steady. The people leaned close, eager to learn. Rena watched from the shadows. She saw how the people smiled when he spoke, how they repeated his words with respect. She felt a strange heaviness in her chest. It was not anger alone. It was something else she could not name. Suddenly, a young boy noticed her hood and pulled it back. The crowd gasped when they saw the silver eyes of their princess. At once, they bowed low to the ground. Tomash looked up, meeting her gaze with the same calm as always. "Your Highness," he said, standing. "You honor this place with your presence." Rena's face burned, but she forced her voice steady. "I came to see what the people speak of. They say you teach them. They say you give them strength." Tomash nodded. "I teach nothing new. I only remind them of what they already have." The strength was always theirs. The crowd murmured at his words, proud to hear such praise. Rena felt her pride weaken. She could not show fear before them, so she lifted her chin. "Do not think you can turn my people against me, human." Tomash did not flinch. "I turn no one. They choose whom to follow. If they see truth in my hands, it is because truth was missing in yours." The words struck deep. The crowd waited in silence, unsure what would happen. Rena wanted to shout, to command him to kneel, but his calm eyes held her in place. She turned away quickly, pulling her hood back over her face, and left without another word. When she returned to the palace, her heart was heavy. She paced her chamber, her mind torn between anger and shame. She had wanted to expose him, but instead she had seen her people's trust in him with her own eyes. His silence in the hall, his calm in the chamber, his strength in the streets, all of it made her feel small. That night, she dreamed of the wooden bird he had once offered her. In the dream, the bird flew from its box, wings wide, soaring beyond the towers. She reached for it, but it always stayed just out of her grasp. She woke in sweat, her heart pounding. The next morning, the old advisor entered her chamber. His voice was quiet but firm. "Your Highness, the people see Tomash as a guide. They do not mean to dishonor you, but they have found hope in him. You may resist it, but you cannot deny it." Rena glared. "And what do you suggest?" "That I bow to a human." The advisor bowed his head. "Not bow. Learn. Even a royal can learn. A crown that listens grows stronger than one that only commands." Rena turned to the window, staring at the city. The streets below were filled with life. Machines moved, lights glowed, children laughed. All of it had been made possible by the man she had once mocked. In that moment, she realized something she had never faced before. Her pride had blinded her. She had thought her crown alone gave her strength. But the people were showing her another truth. Strength was not in words of insult. It was in action, in patience, in the hands of one who built instead of destroyed. She clenched her fists. The thought of bowing to him filled her with shame, yet the thought of ignoring him filled her with fear. For the first time, she felt the weight of her crown not as a gift, but as a burden. Meanwhile, Tomash continued his work without seeking palace favor. He repaired, he taught, he built. He spoke little, but his silence grew louder each day. And the people, once fearful of speaking against their nobles, now carried his words in their hearts. "Bow only to truth and to life," they said, repeating his teaching as if it were law. In the palace, Rena heard those words again and again. They echoed through the halls, carried by servants, whispered by guards. And each time, she felt the sting of her own insult from the past. The 19-year-old royal who had once mocked a wooden bird now faced a choice she could not escape. Either cling to her pride and risk losing her people, or learn from the human she had once called weak. The city slept under calm skies, but unease was rising in the palace. Scouts had returned with troubling news. A rival kingdom was moving its ships closer, using the night to hide their advance. Their rulers had watched the unrest in Rena city and believed it was the perfect time to strike. Inside the palace council hall, nobles spoke in loud voices. Some demanded that the royal guard be sent at once. Others shouted that the people must be kept inside the walls. Rena sat at the head of the table, her crown heavy on her head. She tried to appear strong, but her mind was torn. The voices clashed like thunder until an old advisor raised his hand. The enemy does not fear our guard. They see weakness here, weakness in our divided city. We must show unity, or we will fall. Rena's eyes narrowed. She knew the truth in his words. Yet the thought that her people admired Tamash more than her still burned. Could she allow a human to stand as their shield in this hour? Before she could decide, the sound of bells echoed through the hall. They were not bells of celebration but of warning. The rival ships had crossed the border. Their weapons glowed in the distance like fireflies of war. Panic filled the palace. Servants ran, guards shouted orders, and nobles argued louder than before. Rena rose from her seat, her voice steady though her heart raced. "Call Tamash. Bring him here." The hall went silent. The nobles looked at her in shock. Some were angry, some relieved, but none dared disobey. Messengers hurried out, and soon Tamash walked into the chamber. He wore no armor, only his simple worker's clothes, but his calm steps brought quiet to the room. Rena looked at him with a mixture of pride and shame. "The enemy moves to attack us. My counsel argues but finds no clear path. You have seen battles on earth. You have studied the ways of war. What would you have us do?" The nobles gasped, but Tamash did not bow. He simply met her eyes and spoke. "Strength is not only in weapons. It is in the mind that guides them. Your rival believes you are divided. If you fight them as they expect, you will lose. But if you fight them with what they do not see, you will win." Rena leaned forward. "And what do they not see?" Tamash pointed toward the city outside. "They do not see the will of your people. They do not see the simple traps that can break a great army. They do not see the spirit that rises when hope is alive." The old advisor nodded slowly. "He speaks with wisdom. We must listen." That night, Tamash walked the streets, gathering the workers and families. He explained his plan in simple words. The people listened with eager faces, their fear melting into determination. They began to prepare not with heavy weapons but with clever tricks. They built hidden barriers in the narrow streets. They placed mirrors to confuse enemy sights. They filled empty barrels with fire dust to create sudden bursts of flame. The farmers tied metal wires between houses to slow marching soldiers. Children carried messages from one end of the city to the other, faster than any machine could. Rena watched all this from her palace window. She could hardly believe what she saw. Her people, once silent and divided, now moved with purpose. And it was not her command that guided them, but Tamash's calm voice. When the enemy ships drew closer, they sent a message. "Surrender your city, or face fire." The nobles trembled, but Rena stood tall. With steady voice, she replied, "We do not bow." The enemy began their attack. Bright beams shot from their ships, shaking the walls of the city. Soldiers poured into the streets, expecting to crush weak defenders. But at once they met the traps Tamash had set. A street that seemed open was suddenly blocked by falling beams. Soldiers stumbled on wires hidden in the shadows. Fire dust exploded in bursts, scattering their ranks. And in the confusion, the people themselves struck back, using simple tools and sharp courage. From the palace roof, Rena stood beside Tamash, watching the plan unfold. She saw the enemy forces breaking apart, their numbers useless in the narrow streets. She turned to Tamash. Your wisdom guides them as if they have trained for years. Tamash did not smile. His eyes stayed on the battle. They fight not because of me. They fight because they believe they can. Hope is their shield. As the night went on, the enemy grew weaker. Their ships, trapped by false signals and mirrors, wasted energy firing into empty air. Their soldiers, trapped in alleys, surrendered one by one. By dawn, the rival kingdom's attack was broken. The people gathered in the great square, cheering louder than ever before. They shouted the name of their princess, and they shouted the name of the human who had guided them. For the first time, the two names rose together, side by side. Rena stood before them, her crown gleaming in the morning light. She raised her hands for silence, her voice clear and strong. My people, you have shown courage beyond measure. You have defended your home not with pride but with unity. And this man, Tamash, has shown us that wisdom can come from beyond our stars. Today we are not divided. Today we stand as one. The crowd roared with joy. Children lifted wooden birds in the air, carved in honor of the gift Tamash had once offered. The sight filled Rena's eyes with tears she did not hide. Later, when the square grew quiet and the people returned to their homes, Rena walked with Tamash through the palace garden. The air was cool, the flowers bending in the breeze. She stopped and faced him. Her voice was softer than the council had ever heard. When I first met you, I mocked your gift. I thought silence meant weakness. But I see now that silence can be stronger than any word. You have given my people hope. You have given me truth. Tamash looked at her with calm eyes. Truth was always before you. You only needed to listen. Rena bowed her head, the weight of her crown lighter than ever before. Then let me listen now. Let me learn. For a royal who does not learn is no royal at all. The garden grew still, as if the very air respected the moment. And though the war was over, a greater change had begun. For in the heart of a young alien royal, pride was giving way to wisdom. And beside her stood a human, silent yet strong, whose quiet steps had reshaped the fate of a world. The city healed quickly after the battle. Walls were rebuilt, streets cleared, and families returned to their homes with relief in their hearts. The scars of the enemy attack remained, but they were marks of victory, not defeat. Everywhere the people walked, they carried themselves with new pride. They had defended their city together. And in every voice, one name was still spoken with respect. Tamash. Yet another name also rang with strength, one that had been doubted before. Rena. For though Tamash had guided them, it was their young royal who had stood firm and declared, "We do not bow." The people remembered those words. They remembered her courage in the face of fire. In the days that followed, Tamash refused titles or rewards. He continued his simple work, teaching families to repair their tools, showing guards how to sharpen their minds as well as their blades, reminding everyone that strength lived in them already. He did not walk the city as a conqueror. He walked as a friend. Rena watched all this from the palace, her thoughts a storm. She had insulted him once, calling his gift small and unworthy. She had believed his silence meant weakness. But now she knew better. Silence could hold greater power than any proud speech. Action could outshine any crown. One morning, Rena called her council together in the great hall. Nobles lined the walls, the old advisor stood at her side, and Tamash was summoned once more. He entered with steady steps, carrying no weapon, no emblem, no crown. Only himself. Rena rose from her throne. Her voice carried across the chamber. When Tamash first came to our city, I mocked him. I thought myself greater, for I was born royal. But when danger came, it was not my pride that saved us. It was his wisdom, and the courage he gave to our people. I stand before you today not to defend my crown, but to share it. From this day, Tamash will not walk as an outsider. He will walk as one of us. The hall echoed with murmurs. Some nobles frowned, but the people standing at the doors cheered. Tamash, however, shook his head. His voice was calm. I need no crown, no seat of power. I am not here to rule. I am here to build. Let your people see that their royal can learn. That is enough. Rena felt heat rise in her chest, but it was not anger. It was respect. She nodded slowly. Then so it shall be. You do not need a crown to guide us. Your silence has taught me more than any tutor. Your patience has shown me more than any scroll. From this day, I will listen to my people as you have listened to them. I will rule not with pride, but with wisdom. The old advisor bowed deeply. A crown that learns is a crown that lasts. Today our city is stronger than ever. Word spread quickly. Across the city, families repeated the royal's speech. Children carved wooden birds and placed them in their homes as a symbol of hope. Traders painted Tamash's name on their shops. Guards whispered of his courage. But most of all, the people saw a new bond forming between their royal and the human. A bond of respect. As the seasons turned, the city flourished. Where once machines broke often, now they were mended with care. Where once nobles argued for power, now they listened more to the people's voice. And where once a royal looked down on a wooden gift, now she walked among her citizens, asking questions, listening to their needs. Tamash never sought to lead, but his presence was always felt. When children asked him to tell stories of earth, he spoke of simple farmers, of rivers and forests, of people who stood strong without crowns. His words reminded the city that greatness was not born from titles but from the choices of everyday life. Rena often joined these gatherings, sitting quietly among her people, no throne behind her, no guards at her side. She watched, listened, and learned. And with each passing day, her pride melted into something greater. Humility. One evening, as the sun set behind the tall towers, Rena and Tamash walked through the palace gardens. The flowers glowed in soft light, and the air was calm. Rena stopped by a fountain, her reflection rippling in the water. "Do you know why your silence that day wounded me so deeply?" she asked. Tamash looked at her with calm eyes. "Because silence is a mirror. It showed you your own words more clearly than mine ever could." Rena nodded slowly. "Yes. I heard my insult louder in your silence than in any argument. And since then, I have carried it like a stone in my heart. But that stone has taught me. I will never again judge someone for the smallness of their gift. For even a small gift can carry a great truth." She reached into her cloak and pulled out something she had kept hidden. It was the wooden bird, the one Tamash had once offered. She had taken it back from her chamber long ago. Now she held it out with both hands. "This time, I do not mock it. This time, I honor it. Let this bird rest in our palace as a sign that respect is stronger than pride." Tamash accepted her gesture with a simple bow of his head. "Then the bird has found its place at last." The sound of laughter drifted in from the city below. Families were gathering for a feast, celebrating the season's harvest and their hard-won peace. Rena smiled faintly. Do you hear them? They are not cheering for crowns or for battles. They are cheering for life. That is what you gave them. Tomasz looked toward the city lights. I gave them nothing they did not already have. They only needed someone to remind them. The fountain bubbled softly, and the stars began to appear overhead. Rena felt the weight of her crown again, but this time it was not heavy with pride. It was steady with purpose. She turned to Tomasz, her voice firm but gentle. Then remind me always. For a royal who forgets the truth is no royal at all. And so it was that the 19-year-old alien royal, once known for her insult, became known for her change. Her people remembered not the pride of her words but the strength of her humility. And they remembered the human who had turned and walked away in silence, yet whose quiet steps had led them all to a brighter path. Humanity, young among the stars, had earned a place not through conquest or power, but through dignity, patience, and unshakable spirit.